Hello and welcome to this CDO interview series. My name is Eleanor Treharne Jones and I'm the CEO of Kensu. And I'm delighted to be speaking today with Salema Rice. Salema Rice is the Chief Executive Officer of CDO Today and also a 25-year tenured Chief Data and Analytics Officer with previous roles as a partner at Accenture, at Bain Capital and Allegis Group in an impressive career spanning multiple industries. Salema, thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. Happy to be here today.
So with all of that, you're clearly the perfect person to ask about, what you think encompasses the role of the Chief Data Officer today.
Well, the Chief Data Officer today looks really different than when I started. I think of myself as like a 25-year, fifth generation Chief Data and Analytics Officer, meaning that early in my career, I was seen as kind of the bailiff. Then I became the lawmaker. Then I became the builder, the value driver, the strategic driver, and now I'm kind of in more of a strategic advisory role. But I think that all chief data officers are somewhere along that spectrum today. It's really interesting that for many of us that have been in the field for a long time, we had the entire realm. So everything from that had the word data or had the word analytics. So think of the technical side of it, from the ingestion, from the mastering of the data to, building out the models, the target, the business intelligence, all levels of the analytics, and then kind of everything that fell in the middle around data management, data governance, data quality, kind of that almost like teeters on, a little bit of technical, a little bit of business. But what I see, in today's chief data officers is this emergence of like almost data product owners, right? Or data product officers, where not only do they need to have a broad understanding of the technical components of data, but they also need to understand the business components of it, but they also need to know how to drive value in the organization by using data products to deliver the volume velocity of problem solving that organizations need today. So it's really, really changed. And I think that the chief data officers that have been around for a long time are, going to have to step up and almost like mentor this new breed that's either coming from supply chain or coming from, marketing, where they're being groomed to be the future chief data officers of the organizations.
And I talked about, your kind of impressive career in a range of different industries. If you're happy, tell us about how you started, your first, what you would consider a chief data officer role. The title may not have been that at the time, but tell me when you first kind of, took that step forward and how your career kind of navigated from that point.
Yeah. And so in the early 2000s, I would say somewhere around maybe 2006, I had a global responsibility for bringing different parts of the organization together in understanding how data could be used as an asset. So think of bringing together sales data and financial data and risk data and being able to tell a story of how one functional part of the organization impacts another part, right? So we can always tell using a rear view mirror approach what happened in sales, what happened in finance, but to be able to say what happened, why it happened, and what's going to happen next requires you to be able to bring that kind of world together and be able to have an executive view of it, right? To be able to almost be the problem solvers, the storytellers, but maybe more importantly, to build trust within the organization, to create things like a single version of the truth. When I was first starting out as a chief data officer, we used to reverse engineer critical reports like SEC type reports, Basel, BCBS 239 financial reports, in order to determine what was a critical data element. But today, critical data elements are really, what data are we using to solve problems? But the for me in that early stage, it was kind of like almost understanding what it was going to take to be the company's change agent, to be able to report to somebody or within the organization somewhere where I could have that effect. And so for me, it was really around being given this opportunity to bring an enterprise together. And that meant bringing together the data. So I had the technical view. So I had the ingestion, the data warehouse, the data lake. Eventually, I had big data. So kind of building that that world, bringing data management, data quality, reference data, metadata, master data, building up data stewards, and people within the organization, like building skills, right? Just like we do today. That part didn't look a lot different other than helping people to understand, like, you need to own the data, right? Like the business needs to own the data. IT can own the technical processes, but it was almost like a combination of being a liaison to every functional leader, but then so kind of having a dotted line to all these different functional leaders, but then having a solid line to somebody like the CEO or the chief strategy officer or the chief information officer. So I feel very fortunate that I started at a time when data was not sexy, right? Like typically my office was in the basement. I was either a subdivision of the IT department or a subdivision of a business department. But I think that it taught me so much, and I have such a broad view now of the role of chief data officer that I enjoy mentoring the chief data officers today and the chief data officers of tomorrow.
What's some of the advice that you give? You talked about mentorship, but if people are looking for a career and taking this path, what are the critical background skill sets, first steps that they should be making?
Well, I guess in terms of, data in itself, right? Like everybody loves these words like AI and generative AI and all the things we can do with AI, which they are great, right? I mean, like we've evolved, we can use it to be more efficient, but really you have to trust the data, and your organizations that you're working with have to feel like they're getting able to make quality fact-based decisions. So in order to do that, I often tell people, like, the foundation is critical. Like you really you can't trust your AI. You can't have responsible AI without having responsible data. So having things like a good solid metadata layer, a data catalog, your data quality, like there are things that, in financial services, there was you had the javelin of regulators that, mandated that, but in these other industries, that wasn't the case, right? So in some industries, they sort of, went out the gate with, I'm going to build these great AI models, but how much do you really trust it? And so a lot of them come to me with, how do I go back? How do I take a more dual velocity approach at building a product that, as I'm looking at that product and looking at, instead of trying to, boil the ocean of, I have 20,000 critical data elements, what are just the critical components that you need to solve this one problem, right? And really focus on making sure that when you solve that problem, because how you solve that problem, there could be many ways to solve it, but the data behind the scenes has to be curated. It has to be of the highest quality, or you'll very quickly lose your customers, whether that's internal customers or even external customers. So that's, definitely one of the things that I always lead with. I would say the other thing in mentoring is that, you probably know for more than 5 years now, culture, not not talent, not tools, not value, but culture has been the number one challenge that chief data officers have had. And I think that, there's you start culture in your own organization. So one of the CEOs that I worked for when I was at Bain, he basically taught me that, you're the CEO of the data organization, right? Like at the end of the day, you are the CEO for that group, right? And so, I often led my teams with compassion. And back when I started, that was not, especially as a woman, like, that was seen as a weakness. But yet in my organization for almost 10 years, I had less than 1% attrition in my organization. And it's because I created a culture of innovation. I created a culture of experimentation. I created a culture of, people being able to call it out, to even if it was me, right? Like, call it out. Don't keep it inside. We win together and we lose together. And to be able to create an environment where they're able to learn new skills and work on new problems and be able to solve new challenges, like that's how you retain the talent that you have, right? You get that great talent in, and then you need to find ways to keep them by having these other things around culture, the same type of cultural things that you're doing outside your organization, right? You're showing your team and is an example of how data drives digital transformation. So it's almost like leading by example. The same way you lead your team by example, you're going to lead the entire organization by example, and that's how you kind of continue to evolve yourself within the organization.
In your career, you've worked across a number of different industries, and you touched a little while ago on how regulation was a driver within the financial space. You've also worked in automotive and other areas. So what do you see as the differences between those verticals, industries, whatever you want to call them, in terms of how the CDO role has evolved?
Well, it's very different. I think, for many industries, they didn't have a chief data officer, right? They might have had somebody in IT who was responsible for data, or they might have had, somebody in the business who had some level of data or analytics, but it was typically within a silo, where now we're seeing chief data officers kind of pretty much within all organizations, or chief digital officers where data and analytics falls underneath of them. But I think that each industry looks very different. In financial services, we still see chief data officers in the kind of either under the chief risk officer or under the chief information officer, depending upon how the bank is structured and depending on the size of the bank. In retail, we see a lot of chief data officers working for the chief marketing officer, or in some of the biotech or pharmaceuticals, you'll see the chief data officer working for the chief financial officer. I like in some of the media and telecom, they're still reporting to the chief strategy officer. So I think depending upon, the industry and depending upon the CEO, so the chief executive officer and the chief strategy officer are setting the strategy for the overall organization, right? And so how does data help align to their strategies? And that's kind of where you focus on where the role lives within the organization. So for me, when I was a chief data officer, I had always had two really big goals. It was, how can I help the company either save money, or how can I help us grow? And so I tried to take every product that I created and kind of align it to one of those things. So at the end of the year, I could easily say, here's how we helped achieve these goals. Here's how data and analytics really help transform our organization. And that's kind of something that, I think is still evolving, especially around chief data officers were not traditionally product owners, product managers, and so kind of that evolution that's evolving right now in the industry as well.
Salema, thank you so much for talking to us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure there's so much more that we could have covered. For more interviews like this, please do go to cdomagazine.tech, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.